Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome to Living Beautifully, where we are cultivating something good in our lives and in the lives of those around us. I don't know about you, but I feel like every grocery trip I take becomes more and more expensive. It's to the point where I feel like it's $100 ticket just to step foot in there. Then there's all this talk about inflation and recessions, not to even mention all of the food recalls that they've been talking about on the news. I feel like more and more people are seeing the benefit of becoming more self-sustainable. And I feel like there's no better way to do that than through gardening. Gardening is not only a great hobby, but it's a great way to try to supplement your grocery bill. It's great for physical activity, getting you out in the sun and the fresh air. And then it has tons of mental health benefits as well. In my opinion, there's no downside, and it's accessible to anyone. Tight on space? You can try container gardening. Focus on getting varieties that have been bred to be dwarfs and are utilized for small spaces. Or if you're concerned about different physical limitations, set up your garden so that you have beds that are higher off the ground. This is going to decrease the amount of time that you're having to bend down. And then just take things at your own pace. What if you have a tight budget? You can utilize vessels and repurpose things that you already have on hand. The only requirement is that it can hold soil and allows water to drain. It does not have to be fancy or expensive. What if you don't have a lot of time? We're going to focus on setting up systems so that you're able to maintain your garden with just about 15 minutes every few days. My point is, anyone can grow. Gardening can be accessible to everyone. All you need to do is tailor your garden to your specific resources, needs, and abilities. I'm going to be jumping into a series these next few videos to help you get your gardening journey started off on the right foot. And I think this will be helpful not only for those of you who are just starting out, but even those who already have your garden set up. We're going to be going through planting layouts, season planning, succession planting, all kinds of tips and tricks to help you maximize your harvest. I hope that this will be helpful to you regardless of where you are in your gardening journey. Let's get into it. Okay, so you've decided that you want to start a garden. The first and one of the most important things for you to decide is the location of your garden. If you are in an apartment, you have a small balcony, that's probably your best option. For some people, it may be your patio or porch. If you have a big enough backyard, then you can choose a location within your yard. I would recommend that if you have multiple locations to choose from, that you watch those options over several days to see where the sun moves and how much sun or shade that particular location gets, because the sun is one of the most important things to consider when you're deciding a location. There is only one sun in our universe, and it really cannot be recreated. You can try to adjust different things with your soil, or based off of the way that your land drains, you can adjust your watering, but there is only one sun, and it's very hard to recreate the powerful rays that the sun produces. And so that's something that you want to really consider when you're deciding on your location. Your vegetable plants are going to need about 6 to 8 hours of sun per day. And so you want to make sure that the location that you decide upon is going to give that to them. For those of you that are in hotter climates, you may want to put your plants in a location that receives a little bit of shade in the afternoon. And so that's something that you can consider as well. So once you've decided on your location, then you have to decide on what type of beds you want to use. If you're on a small balcony or on your patio or something like that, then containers may be a great option for you. Some of the advantages is that you can move these around. So in the spring, you can put these in an area that are getting full sun, but then in the heat of the summer, you can move them somewhere that has a little bit more shade. And then if you relocate, then you can take those containers with you. And so those are some of the pros of using containers. Some of the cons is that because you're growing in such a small area, there's really not enough surface within that area to create like a full kind of living ecosystem. And so you're relying more so on potting soil. You're just using a growing medium, and because of that, your plants are going to be more dependent on you fertilizing them more regularly, and you definitely have to water more regularly as well. But the type of container that you use is also a very versatile option. You can use things that you have on hand. Some people use bins. Some people, you can make them yourself. You can also customize the look of the containers to be, whatever your heart so desires. And so this is a great option for those of you that are starting out. Another really great option is growing directly in ground and using the soil that you already have on hand. This is the most economical option. You're not having to build anything or place anything. You're just using the earth that you have at your disposal. Something to consider if you decide to grow in ground is getting your soil tested. You can send this off to different companies online. You can also go to your local county's extension office, agricultural extension office, and they can test your soil for you. Knowing the composition of your soil can be really helpful in deciding what kind of amendments you would want to incorporate into your soil, and also kind of knowing ahead of time the different types of problems that you need to look out for. So like if your soil is really, really heavy clay, you may want to add in some sand to try to help with drainage, and you want to be a little bit more mindful with your watering. Or if your soil is really deficient in a particular nutrient, you can add that back in. And so doing a soil test if you're deciding to grow in ground is something that can be really helpful. We're going to talk a little bit about soil a little bit later. So the last bed option we're going to be discussing are raised beds. And this could be a video in and of itself. You have so many options to choose from. I'm just going to briefly go into the different things to consider. So the first thing you want to decide is the type of material that you want to use. So some of the common materials that people use for raised beds are wood, metal, and then you have like concrete, stone, brick, more permanent structures. The cheapest of those options is going to be wood. And you can actually just look up like a DIY kind of instructions as far as putting it together and just buy the lumber and put it together yourself. There's also kits that you can buy online that has the wood pre-cut and has all of the different screws and bolts that you need, and those can be really helpful, especially if you don't have a whole lot of construction experience, but they are a little bit more expensive. Then kind of the next step up in expense would be your metal raised beds. They're going to last a little bit longer than wood, but again, like I said, they're a little more expensive. And then you have your essentially permanent type of structures, and so that would be like your brick or your stone. Those things are pretty much going to stand the test of time, but they're going to be exponentially more expensive and require some type of professional assembly or construction in order to put those together, unless you are like a super DIYer. So those are kind of the options and materials. And then you have to decide your size and height. A lot of that's going to depend on the size of the garden that you decide upon, and we're going to talk about that too. But then the height is something that you want to consider, especially if you have some physical limitations. So like this particular bed is like 2 feet off of the ground. And so this would be something you can see that I can reach into this bed and kind of tend to these plants without really bending over. And so having it higher up on the ground is a lot more helpful. It's easier on your back. It gives you better access to your plants if you're worried about having to bend down a lot to care and tend for your plants. The other thing to consider with your raised beds and the depth is that you're going to have to fill all of that with soil. And so soil can get really, really expensive when you're talking about raised beds, but it's one of the most important things to consider when you're planning your garden. And that leads us to our next point, which is the importance of soil. When it comes to planning out and budgeting your garden, if there was one thing that I would tell you to never try to cut corners or cost on, that would be soil. Try to get the best, highest quality soil that you possibly can that's within your budget. Agricultural specialists, when they talk about the best type of soil to grow plants in, they describe it as a loamy soil. And basically all that means is that there's a balanced mixture of clay, sand, and silt. And not balanced in the sense of like the exact same ratios, but balanced in the sense that they work together well to create the proper drainage, moisture, and nutrition retention, as well as aeration and soil structure. I'll put a little graph up here just to kind of give you an idea, and a more scientific graph that shows you more of the proportions that an actual loamy soil is consistent of. That's one of the reasons why I talked about testing your soil if you're working in ground. And then if you're in a raised bed, you have a great opportunity to really customize your soil mix. And I recommend that you really take advantage of that. What I did actually in my raised beds is I did 50% topsoil and 50% compost. So that compost is going to provide a lot of organic matter and nutrition, and then that topsoil has the clay, silt, sand, the actual kind of dirt component of the soil to provide more structure. And provide the water and nutrient retention as well as the drainage that the bed needs. I also incorporated a little bit of vermiculite and perlite into all of my beds to add further moisture retention with the vermiculite and aeration and drainage with the perlite, because essentially a raised bed is just a large container. It's big enough to where it's able to support and sustain life. It's able to provide, it has a large enough surface area to where you're able to establish, different fungi and bacteria. You're able to create your own little ecosystem, but essentially it is just a large container. And so you really want to make sure that you're focusing on building quality soil structure, because that's going to be the most important thing when it comes to that and sun and caring for your plants, and determining how much harvest you're able to get from the space that you have. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that this was helpful to you regardless of where you are in your gardening journey, but especially for those of you who are just starting out, I hope that this encouraged you to take that first step and go ahead and get growing. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. And remember, even if you're not growing something in the ground, you can always cultivate something good in your life and in the lives of those around you. Thanks and take care.